He got his Bachelor's of Science degree in biomedical engineering at LeTourneau University and his master's degree in the same field at Baylor University, and then went on to get his PhD in kinesiology, exercise, nutrition, and health promotion at Baylor University in 2014. He's in his 7th year as a faculty member in the School of Health Promotion and Kinesiology, and currently serves as the co-director of the Institute for Women's Health at Texas Women's University. Among other things that he researches, his primary line of research includes physiological responses during equine-assisted activities and therapies in adults with Parkinson's disease. And so, Dr. Rigby, we are glad to have you with us today and looking forward to this program.
Well, thank you very much. And it's really my pleasure to speak with you today. And thank you for allowing me to visit with you and talk a little bit more about my research study that I've recently been funded. Well, I apologize, there's a fan that comes on in my office, and so I can't control it. And so that's what, if you hear a slight humming in the background, that's what that is. So I've tried to put the camera closer to me, or my microphone too. So, the title of this research study that I'm currently conducting, how does 8 weeks of equine assisted therapy affect older adults diagnosed with Parkinson's disease? And so I want to get right into a little bit of background, then I'll talk a little bit more about myself and where I come from and my research team, and then we'll get into the study itself and some of the, like, who qualifies and what are some of the benefits that you would get from participating in this research study, how long is the study, what you'll expect to be doing, all these things, okay? So let me briefly talk a little bit of background here, okay? There are actually no current research studies published in peer-reviewed journals that include the use of equine-assisted therapy in adults with Parkinson's disease. So believe it or not, there are no research studies out there. There's quite a bit of research with equine-assisted therapy and other in individuals with other chronic conditions. Some of the most common research that you'll find is equine-assisted therapy in children with autism spectrum disorder, and then children with other developmental issues like cerebral palsy and things like this. There's been a recent push to have equine-assisted therapy and looking for the effectiveness of this in adults over the past few years. The main research that's come out over the past few years with equine-assisted therapy in adults has been adults actually with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And a lot of the participants in these research studies are veterans. And so, so what I'm looking at, though, I'm looking at more of, I come from a background where I specialize in people with neuromuscular conditions and neurological conditions. And so Parkinson's disease, I started actually doing research with Parkinson's disease in more of a traditional exercise type setting a number of years ago. And now I'm combining these aspects of equine-assisted therapy, which I've also researched in the past, with my research and my expertise with Parkinson's disease, and coming up with these types of studies that I'll be talking about today. So in our laboratory at TWU here in Denton, we actually completed a study 2 years ago where men and women with Parkinson's disease completed 6 weeks of simulated horseback riding. Now, this is interesting. This is not something that you would go to Billy Bob's and find, bucking bronco and throws you off like that. These devices that we'll actually be using for this research study as well, which I'll talk more about, are devices made at Baylor University in Waco. I was actually part of the team that developed the first generation of these horseback riding simulators. And how they work is that they actually take the real motion of a horse and incorporates it into that device. Now, how does it do that? Well, you can take specialized cameras and film certain movements, what we call something called motion capture. It's something very common in movies and things like this in today's world. So one of the most popular movies that's come out in the past 10 years that used a lot of motion capture to film their sequences was Avatar. And so movies like this, where you have a lot of people kind of filmed in front of this green screen with these sensors on them, kind of captures their three-dimensional movement. It's possible to do that and then take the three-dimensional model and then put it in a computer and then get all your results. And so that's basically what these devices do, but with horseback riding. Okay, so that's how they work. And we currently have 2 of these devices on our campus here at TWU. But in this study 2 years ago, we found that when participants, both men and women, rode this device that simulated horseback riding movement, we found that balance improved and some aspects of quality of life also improved in these individuals. And so these are all older individuals, all over the age of 65. Like I said, men and women. There are about 10 participants in this particular study. If you just Google simulated horseback riding Parkinson's disease, you'll find the journal article actually pretty quickly, I think, because it's the only one that's been done. So this was good pilot data, what we call pilot data, which basically means you need to have some groundwork, some basic data to go and apply for research grants with it. So that's what we did. So we took this data and I basically used that in a grant application, and I got some funding for the current study that I'll be talking about today. Okay. So you're probably asking yourself, well, why do you study equine assisted therapy or simulated horseback riding? This is such an interesting field and interesting topic. So the movement of the horse may improve motor symptoms such as balance, gait, and other related tasks. And the way that does this is that I've actually shown in one of my previous research studies, not people with Parkinson's, but general for anybody who's on a horse, that when you're on a horse, your body goes through movement patterns that are very similar as if you were walking on level ground. So specifically your torso, your pelvic region, your legs, they all go through these these kind of patterns that when you're on a horse, basically it simulates walking for you. That's another way to put it. Okay, without the obviously the impact of the foot on the ground. And so if you can simulate walking in such a manner that way, and maybe you yourself or you know somebody who doesn't walk very well or can't walk very well at all, or has exhibits slow and shuffling gait, or has a lot of takes a lot of frequent steps or increased cadence is what we call it. You know, this type of therapy should help improve things like balance, gait, and other related tasks. And then performing exercises while horseback riding can also improve muscle strength. So it's not just about riding the horse, but in a therapy setting using horseback riding, the therapist will often have the rider perform certain tasks or certain exercises while the horse is moving. So things like reaching, functional reaching, if the participant can do it, or if the rider can do it, even sit-ups, and riding in different ways on the horse, like sideways or backwards and things like this. So the therapist gets really creative with the client and really gets the most out of their session when they do this. But there's another big benefit to this, and it's what we call the psychological or psychosocial aspect of this therapy, and that is that when you have a human and an animal bond, if that bond is there, it's been shown that stress and other psychological symptoms, even cognition to some degree, has been improved when there's a facilitation of mammal to mammal bonding, which is very, very interesting. So this therapy kind of combines some physical aspects, it combines some mental, psychosocial aspects, which is makes it very, very unique. There's not a lot of other therapies that can do that, right? If you go to standard PT or OT, you might improve the physical symptoms or motor symptoms, right? But psychologically or mentally, there's a big shortcoming there. Okay, and so think about this kind of therapy as combining all these things together in kind of one aspect. Okay, and so if you really want to get technical about it, well, what facilitates this loss of stress or this lowering of stress and this improvement in other psychological and mental symptoms with the bond? Well, when two mammals bond, there's hormones that get released. And these hormones play big roles in mediating stress, controlling stress, and decreasing it. One of the biggest hormones that plays a role in this is a hormone called oxytocin. Oxytocin actually shows up in pregnant women at the time of delivery. And so there's a reason that when babies are born, they put the child's face right against the mother's chest as quickly as possible. And that's to reduce the amount of stress in both the mother and the child after the child's born. But that's basically due to the release of oxytocin in both the mother and the child. Oxytocin is released from the brain, from the pituitary gland specifically, just a little gland in the middle part of your brain. Okay, but it plays a big role in alleviating stress and psychological symptoms. And these hormones, along with other ones, are released in large amounts when there's bonding, when there's tactile contact between mammals, such as between a person, a human being, and a horse. And it's not just human beings and horses. Animal-assisted therapy has been around for a while. There's been a big push for it in recent years. It's because of the holistic and natural kind of nature of this type of therapy. But there's a reason that people live longer if they own a dog or if they own a cat. It's even shown that people have higher quality of life if they have a plant in their room. Plants respond to human emotion and they lean one way or another, believe it or not. You start to get into that kind of science and things like this. It's really fascinating, really, really fascinating. And they call it the neuroendocrine response, basically your neurological system, the hormones that play a role with that. Okay. So while other forms of exercise have been investigated in adults with Parkinson's disease, such as walking, cycling, swimming, there's been quite a bit of research out there with different kind of more traditional types of exercises. The effects of equine-assisted therapy have not been explored at all, really. The bond with the horse may have an additive effect to overall health, right? You might be able to get some nice benefits with walking, cycling, swimming, right? But that psychological aspect, right, of combining it with that horse motion is what makes this, I think, truly, truly unique. Okay, so I've actually done quite a bit of research with treadmill exercise and things like this and people with Parkinson's. I'm now kind of branching into this equine therapy world with individuals with Parkinson's disease. So I'm the lead investigator for this current research study. I go by my middle name, which is Rhett, and I will give my contact information at the end of the presentation. In my introduction, it was said I'm an associate professor. I have tenure in my department here of health promotion kinesiology at TWU. I've been doing this research in equine-assisted therapy for more than 10 years. I actually started as a master student when I was at Baylor University. And I've had at least a little bit more than 5 years research experience in adults with Parkinson's disease in an exercise and testing setting. So quite familiar with Parkinson's disease itself. I actually more personally have an uncle who's been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. But I not only do research, I also teach our students about Parkinson's disease here at our university. So the majority of students that I teach are undergraduates in their last year of they're in their senior year. They're getting ready to go be physical therapists or occupational therapists. And so I actually teach a class where we talk about exercise and how exercise can benefit people with different conditions. And one of the conditions we talk about is Parkinson's disease. So I go over all the background, the causes, the symptoms of Parkinson's, and then we get into exercise and how to exercise people with Parkinson's and things like this and what to expect. And so not only do this in research, I also teach it to our students. And so you could say I live in this world of exercise and Parkinson's disease. Okay. So it's not only me on this research grant, I have to have other people in other disciplines help me out along the way. Even though I wrote the research grant itself, and I was the one who got funding, I only got it because I have a good team working with me. And so I'm actually partnering with the School of Occupational Therapy here at TWU. And I have some other individuals that I'll be working with as well. Okay. But the main people I collaborate with are faculty who are all OT certified, all practitioners, OT practitioners. And then they bring in students who are going to be graduating with their OT licensure within the next year and things like this. And so it's a good experience for them. So I collaborate with them. My background is engineering and some kinesiology, and so I collaborate with those individuals as well. I collaborate with biomechanists. I collaborate with exercise physiologists, and then I collaborate with physical therapists as well. So it's quite a diverse team that I have here, and I need all these individuals in order to help complement what I'm doing. So with the grant, I got funding to do the research study I'm about to talk about here in just a bit. The organization is called the Human Animal Bond Research Institute. That's who funded me. So I got funded late last year. The research study I'm going to be talking about today actually started earlier this year, but I'll be actively recruiting some more people to be part of the study, which I'll talk about more. I'll be recruiting again this summer, and then I'll be recruiting again over the winter of this upcoming year. Okay, so well, I'll talk about all those things here in just a little bit more in more detail. Okay? So in my research study, for right now, when the ones I got funded with, I am only recruiting men with Parkinson's disease at the moment. You're probably asking yourself, well, don't you represent Texas Women's University, right? So there's a few reasons that I'm only recruiting men at the moment, okay? Number one is that there are documented differences between men and women with Parkinson's disease. So there's quite a few differences, okay? Including what symptoms are primarily noticeable, the effects of estrogen on the progression of Parkinson's, and other sex-related differences. So because of all these differences, it makes it difficult to conduct research with both sexes, okay? Men and women are so different with Parkinson's disease that if you apply for a research grant, you can't lump them in anymore in like a same group and assume that they're homogenous or the same, okay? And this really comes down to the genetic level inside men and women, the XY chromosome versus the XX chromosomes, okay? For instance, in women, you have estrogen floating around in your bodies for much longer periods of time, and estrogen actually plays a role in a preventative manner from having neurons degenerate. And so there's a reason that women get brain-related diseases later in life compared to men, on average a few years later. And it's because estrogen played a role for such a long time that protected the brain from conditions like this. So estrogen is a neuroprotectant, that's what they call it. So amazing what estrogen does. It has all these types of effects. Estrogen plays big roles in bone health and all these things. So hormones are like that. They play, just about every hormone you come across has multiple roles. Like I was mentioning about oxytocin earlier with delivery of a baby, and then mammalian bonding and stress and all that. Right? So there's some other things, there's genetic things that go on, but if you want to read more about it, there's the title of it, all the things I explained in much more detail and much more scientific terms are in the title right there at the bottom of the slide. Now I talk about how exercise should be prescribed differently between men and women because men and women respond differently to exercise and movement and things like this, because hormones play big roles with all that. And of course, hormones are different. And hormone levels are different between men and women with Parkinson's and even without Parkinson's too, right? Okay, obviously. So for now, I'm only recruiting men, but I am planning to do a future research study with women. I have not forgotten, okay? So I have a grant proposal submitted to a larger foundation, actually through the federal government, the National Institutes of Health, which I'm sure we're all quite familiar with now with how Dr. Anthony Fauci leads that. And we've heard quite a bit about the NIH and Dr. Fauci over the past year or so, right? But the NIH or National Institutes of Health fund a big range of projects. And one of the things they really want is human-animal interaction. That's one of the things that they fund. And so I have a pending grant proposal with the National Institutes of Health. I should hear back from that actually in the next month or two. Okay, and that larger scale study using only women with Parkinson's, if funded, should start sometime in 2022. The other reason I'm recruiting only men at this time, I chose men to begin with, is because Parkinson's is more common in men compared to women. It's about 1.5 times more common in men compared to women. So I needed to get another kind of base layer down with my research. And so I figured recruiting men would be a little easier compared to women, just because there's more men with Parkinson's out there than there are women with Parkinson's. So that's the only other reason I did that. Okay, but I do plan to have research with women with Parkinson's disease in the future. However, with the research study that I'm talking about today, I would like to talk more about it with this study with men with Parkinson's at this time. So what I'm wanting to do in this research study, I want to compare select symptoms and functional outcomes of Parkinson's disease before and after 8 weeks of either equine assisted therapy or simulated horseback riding. So what we're doing, we would like to actually kind of do a battery of motor tests, nothing invasive, no blood taken or anything like that. Just some testing where we look at your gait and your balance and some other conditions related to Parkinson's. We actually look at your handwriting as well, things like this, okay? And we look at those things at strategic times before and after this 8-week period where you would actually be doing equine assisted therapy, riding real horses, working with a physical therapist, or be coming to TWU here in Denton and performing simulated horseback riding, like I showed you on those simulators earlier in this presentation. With those individuals, you'd be working with an occupational therapist. But if you become a participant in this research study, you would do one or the other. Okay. Well, I'll talk about where these are located. The Equine Assisted Therapy Center is at Victory Therapy, which is located in Roanoke, just right there by Fort Worth. But then the simulated riding would take place here in Denton, here at TWU. Okay. So you would do one or the other. You can't do both, unfortunately. Okay. But I'm using a simulator in the study because I'm actually wanting to remove the psychological aspect. I want to see if symptoms and functional outcomes in Parkinson's are improved more greatly with the actual bonding of the horse. So that's why I use a simulator, is because it replicates horse movement, and we can do all the same things that you would do physically on a horse, but it removes that tactile contact, that mammalian bonding, and you have just a machine that you're sitting on, right? Okay, so I expect to see improvements in both groups with regard to things like balance and gait and things like this and some other things. But I'm hoping to see in the equine assisted therapy group that the bonding of the horse actually facilitates and drives even physical symptoms greater, because everything's connected. Everything is connected. If you improve mental health, you should be able to improve physical health to a greater degree, and vice versa, physical health, mental health, things like this. So a lot of my students, they think of the body as independent. Things work independently of one another, right? Whether it be your organs or some other bodily systems, hormones, whatever. But that's not the case. Everything depends on one another. Your body goes through these things called feedback loops, which basically, if one thing happens, then another thing happens, and another thing happens, and another thing happens. So everything in the body is connected. Your brain is connected to your body, right? If you experience physical improvements, you should be able to experience mental or psychosocial improvements, and vice versa. So in order to qualify for this research study, you must meet all the criteria below. You have to be a male with Parkinson's disease. You have to be between 40 and 80 years old. I recruit 40 to 80 because those below 40 years old have what's called juvenile Parkinson's disease, and those with juvenile Parkinson's disease tend to exhibit or show different symptoms, and the severity of their symptoms are a little different. And then over 80, I run the risk of recruiting those with major cognitive impairment where they can't follow directions or things like this. Get them what I need to do. The third bullet says have a severity classification of a 2, 3, or 4 on something called the modified, and we pronounce it Han and Yar. So this scale has been around since the 1960s. It is a way to classify severity of Parkinson's. If you see a neurologist or a movement specialist, they should know what this scale is. It's the most commonly used scale in research to report severity of Parkinson's disease. I'm actually going to minimize my screen real quick, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Blow it up here. So hopefully you can see that. Okay. There's a number of stages here. Okay, and they have stages in between like 1 and 2, or like 1.5, or in between 2 and 3. It says 2.5 there, as you can see. But generally, it's related to, do you have impairment of balance? What's going on? Are you physically independent? Do you have severely disabling disease, but you're still able to walk unassisted? Things like this. I generally want people in this 2 to 4 range. If you're diagnosed with a stage 1, your symptoms are so mild that I probably will not see any improvements even with this therapy. Those who are classified as stage 5 are so severely affected that they will not be able to do what I asked them to do in terms of assessing balance and gait and things like this. Okay, so if you want to email me, I'll give you my email at the end of the presentation and my phone number. I can certainly send this to you. You can just Google Han and Yard as well. It'll pop right up. Again, your neurologist, your movement specialist, whoever you see, even your primary care physician might know what the scale is, especially if your primary care physician is experienced in working with those with Parkinson's. Okay. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for people in that 2 to 4 range, okay? And it will require a confirmation from a physician, whether it be a neurologist or somebody else. Okay, let me get back into my presentation real quick. All right. 4th bullet says are able to understand and follow verbal and written instructions. And then of course, I need a clearance to participate in physical activity, because this is physical activity. It's horseback riding, but you'll be doing some exercises and some things while on the horse. And so you need to be able to perform those things, okay? And try to do what the therapist asks you, or at least attempt to do what the therapist asks you to do. Okay. So what will you be doing? Like I said, you will be either performing equine assisted therapy or simulated horseback riding. Okay. I say that you'll be randomized in one or the other, but I can work with you if you live closer and it's more convenient for you to go to Roanoke, or if it's more convenient for you to shoot on up 35, or if you're near Denton, okay, or if you're over on 380, whatever, okay, we can work that out, okay. The reason I can get away with that is because Parkinson's is not dependent on geographical location. So it's not like if I recruit everybody in Southeast Dallas, and I put them all in one group, that's not going to affect my results, basically. Okay. So at this point, I can basically have you choose what group you would like to be in, but at the end of the day, I want an equal number in both of these groups, basically. Okay. So all equine assisted therapy sessions will be in Roanoke, Texas, which is just north of Fort Worth, in that South Lake Carroll Trophy Club kind of area. And then TWU, the simulated riding sessions, will take place at TWU here in Denton. You'll be asked to complete your riding sessions 2 times per week over the course of the 8 weeks, regardless of what group you're in. Okay, and sessions typically last about an hour. Like I said, the equine assisted therapy, the one in Roanoke, that's going to be led by a licensed physical therapist. The simulated riding sessions will be here in TWU led by a licensed occupational therapist. They both come from a similar world, and I'm going to match what the PT does and the OTs do. So the PTs and OTs will be doing these same kind of movements and same kind of action plans for everybody. It's just one's going to take place on an actual horse and one's going to take place on a simulator. Okay. So at times before, during, and after your 8 weeks of horseback riding, you will be asked to come to Denton to complete tasks related to handwriting, walking, balance, and other physical abilities. So we call these sessions where you'll be tested, we actually call them testing sessions. And each one lasts about 2 hours, and there's only 6 of them over the course of 32 weeks. And so I'm a visual person. I don't know about y'all, but I made this timeline, or this graph here. I actually made it today, and it shows basically the timeline of the entire research study. So as you can see, in the horizontal black bar in the middle is kind of my timeline here, and the vertical lines represent testing sessions, or the ones where you come to TWU.
Hey, Dr. Rigby.
Yes.
Hey, we can't see that.
Can you see it now?
No.
Hang on. Could you see the Han and Yar scale?
No.
Oh, you couldn't see it.
Sorry, I didn't think to.
I'll bring it up. I'll bring it up here.
Great.
Sorry.
That's okay. And even if, if it's easier, if you want to just show us those at the end, the Yar and Han scale, and then show us that timeline at the end of your program, so that way your PowerPoint's done. Oh, there you go. It's up.
Okay, so here's that Han and Yar is what I was talking about.
Thanks.
Okay, so that's from earlier. That's the severity. So again, between 2 and 4, not stage 1 or stage 5, like I said. So as you can see, stage 1 is really minimal or no functional disability at all. And then stage 5, you're confined to a bed or wheelchair unless aided. So I can't recruit people in those stages, but I can recruit people in 2, 2.5, 3, or 4. Okay. Again, your neurologist or movement specialist should know what this scale is. And I can email you this scale. If you want to take a quick screenshot of it with your phone, that's fine. I think, Leisha, I think you said this is going up on YouTube anyway, so you could pause it when I talk about it, things like that. So, okay. So let me get into the timeline. Give me just a second. Can you see the timeline now?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right. So with the horseback riding intervention, so as you can see, the horizontal black line represents my timeline, and these vertical lines represent my testing sessions at TWU, where you would come and get your balance and your walking ability or your gait, and then handwriting. So as you can see, there's 6 of them, like I was just saying on the previous slide, but they're spread out over the course of 32 weeks, basically. Okay. And I'm looking at kind of beforehand, I'm looking at kind of midway through, and then I want to do some testing, some follow-up testing as well. Okay. And so why do I do all these testing sessions? Well, the reason I do a testing session, then we wait 8 weeks, and then you start the riding, because I want to see what the effects are, what the effects of your medications, and if you do any outside therapies, any other outside exercise and things like this. I want to see if that alone improves your gait or walk or your balance or your handwriting, things like this. Okay. So there's kind of a dead period at the very beginning, this 8 weeks, and that's on purpose because I want to see what the effects of basically no horseback riding is, right? And then test 2, right before you start riding, I want to grab you again and do all that testing, okay? And then you go through 8 weeks of riding, either the actual equine therapy or the simulated. You'll get a testing session. We'll ask you to come like midway and kind of get a midpoint. That's why it says test 3 right in the middle there. And then test 4 is right at the very end, okay? So I want to capture any of the effects that this therapy has. And then I have a test 5, which is 8 weeks after the riding ends. And then test 6, which is another 8 weeks after that. So about 16 weeks after the riding ends. And I do these test 5 and this test 6 to see if there's any latent effects. Is there any kind of delayed effects or anything like this? Because when it comes to the human body and especially responses to exercise and hormones and things like this, a lot of times people improve that they may not improve immediately, but they might improve weeks afterwards. That's possible. It happens. And so that's why we do these follow-ups. And then test 6, are your improvements still there if you experienced any, or have they gone completely away? These are questions that need to be answered. Okay. And so basically everybody will go through this entire timeline, whether you do the simulated riding or the actual equine therapy in Roanoke. Okay. And then I can basically compare yourself to yourself, right? Between test 1 and test 2 and test 3. So I can compare your results to your own results. Okay. And then I can compare your results to somebody in the other group. Like if you did the live horse therapy, I can compare you to somebody in the simulated. Okay. So there's a lot of benefits to doing a study like this. Yes, it's long, it's 32 weeks, but it's necessary in order to answer the questions that we need to be answered. Okay. The point of all this really is to make equine assisted therapy more accessible and more affordable for people who want to do it. Right now, most insurance carriers, providers will not cover equine assisted therapy, and they cite the reason is because there's not enough evidence that it's effective. Okay. If I can show that this is an effective therapy modality for people with Parkinson's disease, then that might change some minds in these insurance providers. Okay. And so it's all about making this type of therapy more affordable and accessible. That's what it's more about at the end of the day. And obviously the improvements I want to, measure, and I want to see outcomes with both physical and some more mental cognitive things as well in individuals with Parkinson's disease. So let me go back to the presentation. Give me just a second. All right. So hopefully you can see the presentation. Okay, I think I did that right. You will not be asked to pay for any therapy-related costs in this study. The reason I got the research grant is to cover all that. So you do not have to do that at all. Okay, so no cost to you. And in fact, for participating in the research study, we'll give you an extra $400 just for completing the study. About $100 given halfway through the study and $300 given at the end of the study. I do that, I stagger it that way to give you incentive to finish the study. So, and then basically reimburse you for gas, right? Because you might be traveling from somewhere else in the DFW Metroplex that's not close to Denton or Roanoke, okay? Or both, okay? So those are some of the major benefits, along with seeing if this therapy is actually beneficial, right? Okay, it's just working with people with Parkinson's over the past 5+ years in my research. A lot of individuals are looking for anything to help with their current state or their condition. or to help blunt the progression and things like this. And so this might be one of those. And I don't know the answer to that. And that's why I'm doing this research studies to help answer that question. Okay. All right. The $400, by the way, you have the option of getting a check just cut to you, or we can put it as a direct deposit into your account. You have options there. Okay. And it's under the $500 limit. If I gave you more than 500, it would have to be taxed. So this is not going to be taxed. Okay. Okay. So if you're interested in participating, if you feel like you meet the qualifications, or if you know somebody who might, please pass along my contact information. I'm looking for people. I'm gonna start enrolling people in this summer in June. Okay. Like I said, the study started in January of 2021, so just last month. I have a few people already started the study, but I'm recruiting in waves, and so I plan to do this research study and that whole timeline. I plan to restart that timeline with a new crop of participants this summer and into fall. Okay, and so around June is when I'll really start trying to recruit for what I call my second wave. And then December, January, I'll recruit for my third wave. So basically, when I'm timing it to where you would do the horseback riding if you were in the live animal group, the equine assisted therapy group, you would do that in the fall. Okay, if you were recruited in June, and then if you were recruited in December, January, you would do that riding in the spring, because remember there's an 8-week gap in between, like when I first see you and test you, and then the riding starts. Okay, I don't want to ride in the winter. I don't want riding to occur in the summer, just because of temperature issues. We all experienced what it was like last week, and then we all know what Texas summers can do. So I want to stay away from that. I'd rather do more mild weather. Okay, and so that's why I recruit in June and then again in December, January. So if you feel like you would like to participate in this study and do some horseback riding, whether it be simulated or live this fall, you can go ahead and contact me, and I can give you some more information at that time, and I'll just reconnect with you in June. Or if you would rather wait and do next spring, okay, that's fine too. Okay, I'm looking for about 12 to 15 people this June, and another 12 to 15 in December, January, because that's all I can be budgeted for. Okay, that's all budgeted for, and those numbers are okay. It works out when I do my analysis and things like that. That's an appropriate number to have. Okay, you can't do it more than once. So like if you want to do it this fall, you can't re-enroll in the spring, unfortunately. So it's kind of a one-time deal, and then but I can answer any questions you might have and give you more details from the study at any time. There's my office phone right there. Okay, and my email is brigby@twu.edu. And if you have any questions now, I can try to answer those at this time, or just let me know in the future what if you'd like to if you have any questions in the future.
Dr. Rigby, this is Mike, and great presentation. I have one question. Well, we've just come through 2020, and we're looking at beginning in-person live activities again. Have y'all considered any precautions that might need to be needed if COVID is still an issue?
Yes. Yeah. Currently, we actually have a number of research participants in this first wave. And so our research office has required us to follow all COVID-19 precautions and guidelines. So when you come for testing, whether you do riding or testing or whatever, you're required to wear a mask. You're required to self-screen symptoms. All research personnel, myself included, and everybody who's helping me, are required to do the same. They're required to mask up. We have gloves on, which get changed regularly. We self-screen for symptoms beforehand. I have a non-contact thermometer, so I will take your temperature when you arrive. If it's below a certain temperature, we're good. If it's above, I think it's like 100.4, then you will be excused for the day. And then we have hand sanitizers. We have all those proper precautions. We maintain social distancing whenever possible. So we have all those precautions in place. I try to prop open all the doors, and so you don't have to touch any handles, things like this. So I try to be mindful of all that. But in order to conduct this research, our research office and our research ethics office has required us to implement those COVID-19 protocols. And so we will follow those to the T, I guarantee.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yes.
Another question that we have here is from Susan. Susan, I'm going to unmute you if you'd like to ask Dr. Rigby your question.
Yes, I do not drive anymore, and I was wondering if the expenses would cover our getting to the site, to the horses.
Yeah, so I will, with the $400 that you get for completing the study, you can use that money however you wish. Unfortunately, I can't give that money up front. Like I showed, it's more kind of backloaded on the study for incentive to complete it. But that is that's the only other monetary kind of support I can give at this time.
Okay, well, I live in Dallas, and I was wondering where the closest site would be.
Roanoke,
I don't know where Roanoke is.
which is South Lake Carroll, Grapevine, north of Fort Worth, that kind of area.
No, that's pretty far away.
Yeah, and then we're here in Denton. So
Oh, Denton would be closer.
yeah, so Denton's an option. But again, I'm only recruiting men at this time.
Oh, I did not know that. Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. But if you know somebody who's a male at this time, if you could pass along my contact
I'll
info.
spread on the information. Thank you.
Thank you.
So let me ask this, Susan, before you get off, since your plan, Dr. Rigby, is to expand this to include women for 2022, is there a way they can stay in contact with you, or that you could stay in contact with them, so that assuming you do get approval to expand in 2022, would that be possible, so that we can keep those lines of communication open for folks that might be interested, for women that might be interested, this time next year?
Yes, absolutely. If you just want to email me, that's my primary. I'll get back to you the fastest, and I'll reiterate that if I get this grant that I have pending, if I get it approved, I'll start with women late next year, 2022, probably in the fall of 2022. And so, but it'd be good to email me and let me know that you'd be interested in doing that.
Right.
And I will keep you in a folder. I basically have a folder within my email that I put everybody in who's interested, or a potential person who might be in one of my studies. And when it comes time to for that study to begin, I'll just reach back out to you and see if you're still interested.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. I'm so glad, Dr. Rigby, that you addressed, hopefully expanding this to cover women in the near future, because this is such an innovative approach and form of treatment that I just think a lot of people would be really interested in it. A couple of questions that I had as I was listening, and thank you for being so thorough and comprehensive. How long would you say the sessions last for the 8 weeks actual appointments when they come to either Fort Worth or Denton, Roanoke or Denton? How long do those typically last?
So my last bullet here, sessions typically last about an hour. So the actual riding lasts about an hour. So that's about 40 to 45 minutes on the horse. The therapist does do some things often on the horse, some warm up, cool down things off the horse. Not very long, 5 to 10 minutes or so each. But the riding itself is about 40 to 45 minutes. And so once you combine all that, it's about an hour. So an hour for the actual riding, and then the testing is I've been able to get people in and out for testing. I say 2 hours here, but I've been able to get people in and out in an hour, 15 minutes.
Oh, nice.
My talkers take closer to 2 hours. The people that want to have an in-depth conversation with me about other things, which is fine. I mean, that's fine. But if you want to come here and just get it done and take care of business, about an hour and 15 minutes, I've been able to achieve that. But I would say for testing, somewhere between hour 15 and 2 hours.
Okay. And then my other question is, what about weekends for folks that might be working, or they've just got obligations during the week and they're going to have a hard time keeping a hard, weekday approach? Are there availabilities on the weekends?
Yes, I will work with your schedule. Whatever's open in your schedule, we will fit it in.
Terrific.
Yep. I have, like, for instance, right now, for the group that is in my study right now, for those that are doing the actual equine therapy, the riding with the real horses, they're riding on a Thursday late afternoon, like 4 or 5, and they ride on a Sunday afternoon. That's the time they all agreed upon. So that makes it easy for the therapist. But in general, we should be able to work around your schedule. And if you work, 8 to 5 or 8 to 4 or something like this, right? We'll be able to work with that.
Great.
What I don't want for you to do is to ride on consecutive days. So what I don't want is for you to ride on a Saturday and a Sunday. I think you'll get too fatigued and too tired too quickly. I just don't think we can get much to you out of the Sunday session. So what I do ask is that when we do the riding, it's non-consecutive days. It could be a Thursday, Sunday, or Thursday. It could be like one day in between, but not consecutive days.
Sure.
So one of those days will probably have to be during the week. We can do evening. We can do morning. Okay. Just depends on your schedule. And then if you want to do a weekend, we can arrange that.
Makes sense. You referenced earlier in your PowerPoint presentation that you've got an article, a research article that you wrote. How can folks access that?
Yeah, so they can just Google it.
Okay.
If you want to take a quick screenshot of it, it's kind of a long title, I know. But if you have your phone, you can just take a quick picture of it. But just Google that title right there. Should be the first thing that pops up. And it's freely available. Some journal articles you have to pay to view them. This one I purposely put in a journal where it's freely available.
Good. Thank you for that. Yeah, I just quickly went to the bottom of that. When I saw TWU, I assumed it was not going to be accessible to most folks. So thanks for clarifying that. Yeah. And of course, we're recording this, and so this gives everybody a chance if they want to watch it later. Of course, they can pause, write down the complete title, etc.
Yeah. And again, if you Google that exact title, it should pop right up. And generally, when you click on it, they'll have an option to view PDF. And if you can't find it for whatever reason, email me and I can send you the article, the actual article, the PD in a PDF. So you just need Adobe Reader to view it, but most people have Adobe Reader comes standard on a computer anyway, so you should be able to view it. So if you for some reason can't find this article, and in this article I talk quite a bit about the differences between men and women with Parkinson's. I talk about how symptoms are different at different times. The what we call the pathogenesis, or basically how it comes about, is different in men and women. And then what exercises should women be doing with Parkinson's? That was the focus of this study. or this paper really. What exercises should women with Parkinson's be focused on? And so I kind of gave a prescription, basically, kind of like taking medication, right? You have medication, you have a prescription that you take, and you have dosages that you take every day. We all have to think about exercise the same way. Exercise is medicine. And so you take it in doses, and you do it so many times a week, or things like this. And so that's what I emphasize in this research study.
Makes sense. Okay, and Susan, I see that you've got you have a question. Did you want to ask Dr. Rigby, or would you prefer I ask?
Yes, no, I can ask him.
Great.
Oh dear, there goes my phone, but I'll just ignore it. There's a center closer to Dallas that I know that they use for eQuest for students with developmental disabilities.
Yep.
And I was wondering if that would possibly be open for a future site, if you've tried to contact them and see if their horses would be available for your research.
I'm actually planning to expand to eQuest with the study with women with Parkinson's. Yes.
Good.
Because
Okay.
in that study, I need more. It's a larger scale. So I need more people to help to participate. I need more women. I need like a lot of women with Parkinson's to be in that study. I think it's something like 50 to 60 total. But I'm expanding to eQuest to help those who live closer to Southeast Dallas, because that's where it's located. So I will expand to that facility, and that will be an option for my future work with women with Parkinson's.
Okay, thank you.
I'm quite familiar with eQuest, yeah, and so they're great people.
You've
And
got great gentle horses too.
yeah, I do like their facility, and they actually have the largest facility in the Metroplex. It's just that I'm located on the complete opposite side. I'm northwest
Yeah.
or southeast. It in like without traffic, it would take me more than an hour to get over there. So it's just I'm trying to keep this current one more northwest.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, great questions, comments. Let me open it up. We're right at 2 o'clock. So let me just make sure there aren't any other questions or comments. Of course, as you all know, at the end of the PowerPoint, you can contact Dr. Rigby directly. If later on you have a question that you wanted addressed. And as I said, this will be it is being recorded, and we'll be sure to upload it onto our DAPS YouTube channel. So if it doesn't look like we have any other questions at this time, so I think we're at the end of our program. We thank you so much, Dr. Rigby, for really just providing us with a comprehensive understanding of this really exciting, I think it's a pretty exciting new study that you've got, and I think it's brings up a lot of hope for all of us.
Yeah.
Dr. Rigby, before you go, this has been very, very interesting. Will there be some way for us to see the results of this study?
Yes. Yeah. So I plan to, when the results are done and the study is finished and I got all my stuff analyzed and all these things, yes, I plan to publish it, because that's the end goal in research, is to get it published. So yes, I will publish it, probably in a Parkinson's related journal. And so there's a number of journals that are out there, scientific journals that are focused on like solely on Parkinson's disease and Parkinsonism.
Okay.
So I'll do that. And once it's published, I can share that with you.
Great.
I'll also be presenting results at conferences and things like this. And so I'll be making presentations of my results and some slides and things like this. And so I can also share those with you if you want to as well, which is basically a truncated, very more narrow, or basically a shortened version of the article that's going to come out.
Great. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, thank you.
All right. Well, thank you again. We appreciate everyone who joined us. Enjoy the rest of your week. And again, thank you so much, Dr. Rigby.
Thank you for
Thank
allowing me to
you.
visit. Thank you.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.